30th day of July 2024. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're doing good. On this summer's day, you can call in at 709-589-4406. All lines are currently open. Would you eat food? And that's the poll tonight. Would you eat food? Where's the poll to? Grown in a place where 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout are stacked. And this was only 3% of the land where they wanted people to move back into. And so we got a no for a poll for a change. Confuse a few people. This is fun. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirms the safety of Fukushima treated water again. Again. The International Atomic Energy Agency is a part of the military-industrial complex. They're part of the United Nations. They're just another part of that control grid against the planet. It's pretty sneaky what they've done. They started out as a League of Nations, and after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they changed their name to United Nations. There's nothing united about them. It's a complete takeover of everything, and they have bad intentions. They're unelected, they're non-governmental, they have no... They're arrogant, literally monsters is the best way to describe this organization and the people that promote it. The safety of Japan's discharge. The safety of Japan's discharge. And it's kind of interesting that here we are 13 years down the road, and the whole planet still doesn't comprehend the significance of Fukushima, for instance. So this is original footage, the first month or something. And you see the 7,000 people working? Oh, that's right, you don't. You can see a boom from a cement truck that's allegedly pumping water into the fuel pooler reactor 4. The problem with that is there is no reactor 4. There's a lot of people out there trying to convince you there's a reactor 4. I'm mentioning no names. But this is the stump of reactor 4. The reactor cores and the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. Each reactor core is 100 times more important than Chernobyl. And there's 8 fuel pools at the top of the building, so that's 900 times more important than Chernobyl, just a single building. There was 4 buildings and 8 fuel pools. The fuel pools, just because they're not running reactor cores, they're still reactor cores. They've gone through a chain reaction. And so they invoked the word tritium, suggesting that only tritium got out of the buildings when it's clear the entire inventories of 4 decades have gotten out of those buildings. Containing treated water. It's not treated, you can't treat the water. It's not water, it's radioactive waste. Once you put nuclear waste into it, so if I take your water jug out of the fridge, and this is going to sound really bad in what I'm going to say, and I vomit into it, and I put it back in your fridge, and you run it through a filter, is that filtered water? But what we're talking about is radiation, which is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. You can't filter it. Once you try to filter it, the filter is so radioactive, if you leave it on the side of the road in New York, everybody walks past it, dies that day. every day for millions of years. So you can't filter this stuff. This doesn't has the criteria of being able to be filtered. It's anthropogenic man-made radiation. We have terrorist laws that apply to the filters. In a report released Thursday, the UN nuclear watchdog said a task force. So who cares what the UN says? Why would you care what they say? They're a corporation. You don't have no sovereignty over any country. Why would you give them a second thought? Because you've seen them in TV or you've seen them in movies? Because you've been lulled into complacency? Has confirmed that the equipment and the facilities are installed are operated in a manner is consistent with. It was the second report on the matter since Tokyo Electric Power Company, which doesn't really exist. It was nationalized right away, which means it's owned by the government. Begins the water release operations at its power plant in northeastern Japan in August of last year. In August. I ain't that interesting. It began in August? How does that work? How do you begin in August? Let's look at it another way for a second, because it's unbelievably important. Mission includes people from China, which opposed water release. So what? Really? You think there's nobody corrupt in China? And to continue to check the water release regularly. Next on-site review will start. The third of its kind starts of the discharge plan for October to December of this year. Wait a second. Let's look at Unclear, which also is United Nations. A scientific committee on the effects of atomic radiation in 2013, 2012, I can't remember. Yeah, 2013. Don't worry about anything else except for the first three. So the first one is the communities, the second line is the population, the number of people in the community, and the third line is disposition of just gamma, cesium-137, because who cares about alphas, betas, and neutrons besides your kidneys, your liver, your heart, and everything else, which that's going to destroy. So let's not include that in the conversation. But if you just go by cesium-137, which by the way is nasty, it pulses energy 600 feet every second. It wrecks your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells, and the birds, the insects, the animals. Because everybody seems to forget they exist for some reason. Well, I guess in the near future they won't exist after Fukushima, but let's try to remember why they're still here. So Fukushima City, 230 million atoms per square meter. There's not a dirty bomb in history that the projections were could do this to a city, for instance. These cities are so contaminated. They meet all the attributes of a nuclear wasteland. And so what the UN, one of their little monkeys called Unclear done, was pretended that it was a safe dose. You're breathing it, you're drinking it, you're consuming it. You can't avoid it. It's airborne. When you get these numbers, it's airborne 24/7. And then it's all of these communities immediately, because 185 atoms was the evacuation zone at a nuclear plant before Fukushima. Now 26,000 or 55,000 or 3,000 or 90,000. This organization that has nobody's health. I mean, they're claiming there's no adverse health effects. That UN. There's no adverse health effects in a nuclear wasteland? This is what they put out all these headlines on the 10th anniversary, 2021. I was furious. I came out and vigorously denounced those headlines. But none of those United Nations or Unclear, ERPA, the IPRC, etc., would move their loved ones or themselves into these communities with these numbers. Because if you let them get away with this, then they'll do it to everybody worldwide. And it's not right to do it to all these communities anyway. And whether you know it or not, you have the most important voices on the planet. You're in a position of knowing, and you have a right, and you're obligated to be different, right? You know that as well as I know that. You don't have to speak about it or say anything about it, but you're different because you know about it. You know how wrong and sad and pathetic it actually is, right? Counterpunch, Fukushima toxic dumping. Counterpunch is toxic. And it's interesting because toxic dumping, Robert Hunziker, is it? They show you this stuff, and the world's leading epicenter of toxic radioactive water released into the ocean. And they make all of these, they christen it an open sewer. Bear with me. So, because I can take you through all the bullshit and the propaganda, the deceit leading up to that sentence right there. So let's look at that for 1 second. So they denounce nuclear, they denounce the mainstream media, they call the reactors collapse when they don't even exist. Complete loss of all the inventories, and they only give it the prominence of the word collapse. The controversial, rather than no pictures. Notice that the only picture they gave you was that picture. They don't even give you, say, that picture that everybody has access to. They don't show you reactor 3, for instance, because then you're going to question the things they're saying, see? But they lead you around by your nose, closely monitoring collapse and controversials, and symposium on Zoom, radioactive contamination of food, U.S. and water, and what Congress can do about it. And so they sound like they got solutions and everything, but ultimately, they even acknowledge 5 prime ministers have spoken out against, call for an end to nuclear power. And then they used that word there, beginning, in 2023. Beginning. So in 2023, TEPCO started dumping treated radioactive water used to cool the sizzling. The reason it's hot is because it's splitting atoms. Not because it's like a bonfire or like your wood stove or something like that. It's sizzling hot. It can do this underwater. It doesn't need oxygen. It's splitting atoms. And every atom is catastrophic to everything with replicating cells. Of the crumple, and they do it again. Look, the cores of the crumpled. So first they call them collapsed, and now they call them crumpled. And christened the ocean an open sewer. And why would anybody authorize broken down, crippled nuclear power plants to release? Broken down? These are completely... You're talking about 8 reactor cores in each building that are gone. Pretty slick, right? How they just... No pictures. They don't show you that. No pictures. Crippled. They don't show you that. Call it crippled. And then low levels of tritium, and they're directing you to the BBC, which and the British media and universities are pro-nuclear on a level we've never. There's nothing else compares to them. They're there's a word for it, but Machiavellian. when it comes to nuclear. They would see you all dead. One expert said he'd drink it. Yeah, what's his name though? Is he a typical nuclear crank that everybody's well familiar with? And according to Emily, a PhD, an expert in energy and environmental law, the challenge with radionuclides, and then invokes the word tritium. According to the National Academy of Science, there's no safe doses, decades of research. But see, what they keep you in this little tiny box where they're talking about tritium, and they don't even call it tritium-3H, which is what it actually is, because there's a difference. And see, tritium, and you got tritium up there, then there's tritium found in Fukushima. A little tritium goes a long way. Tritium, the idea is to the people that are, and this is 13 years later, so a lot of people don't have any idea of the facts. They're disconnected, but the media, and particularly Counterpunch, which is a pretty big media, they're very informed media, and they produce a lot of stories are just like this, where it's really slick. And the idea is lull you into this paradigm where you start arguing. You come to my site, and if I don't talk about tritium, you run away because that's what you want to know about. You don't understand there's another picture. Because they're going to show you no pictures. That's what they're good at. Tritium ends up tritium. Pro-nuclear activist claims tritium. Nobody should be exposed to radiation unless it's as treatment for cancer. The ultimate betrayal. Using radiation to try to cure you of something caused by radiation. So radiation gets in your body attacks it every second for the rest of your life and builds a tumor around it, and we call it cancer, right? Then you're going to go to a hospital, you're going to get more radiation to get rid of the tumor, so your body attacks that for the rest of your life and builds a tumor around it. But it ends up, because I can take you down this road of radiation therapy, where the worst thing you can do to your body or anybody else's is radiation therapy. It's truly the most bizarre thing imaginable. If this was 100 years ago and you wrote a book that people would use radiation to cure you from the illness caused by radiation, you'd be laughed at the academic world, right? And so they direct you to all the useful idiots for the industry. They all got their part to play. And it just doesn't seem possible that so many people could be so evil and coordinatedly evil. But I can assure you that's exactly what is going on. And as you go through this stuff tonight, you'll start to see all the hallmarks of it. 1,000 tanks. The tanks were all full in 2013. There was no filtration in early 2015. And you can't filter it because the minute it goes through the filter is so radioactive, everything goes through, it becomes out the other end even more radioactive. So if you take your water filter, and I'm not going to use the V word, if you take your water filter, take the water filter and put it in a bowl of 10W30 motor oil, used motor oil. Let it sit there for because the stuff we're talking about, the nuclear, is very toxic. So let it sit there for a month. Now take it and put it back in your fridge and pour water in it and drink that water for the next year. What do you think the health consequences are going to be? Well, when you take radiation and put it through a filter, within 5 seconds, because the stuff we're talking about, you can never get near that filter again. To move the fuel rods they put it in a 50,000 pound container. And it's 50,000 pounds of lead, it's got steel, it's got cement, it's got all kinds of precious metals on the outside of it. And a lot of times, if it goes inside of a container, the container is lined with lead. So imagine taking the same toxicity and putting it in a filter and picking it up. It doesn't work, right? And then they direct you to the worst of the worst humans imaginable, Greenpeace. They're the very last people you want to promote or fund. Greenpeace blocked me on all their sites because I tweeted a picture to them and asked them to retweet it. This is the picture. And because I also tweeted the video of them saying they're at the top of the building to your left at Fukushima Reactor 4. And so why did all the Greenpeace worldwide, because you know how persistent I can be, why did the Greenpeace worldwide block me after I tweeted them that picture and removed that picture? Because if they tweeted that out to their millions of followers, I wouldn't be here today having this conversation. We'd already be on the winning team, right? And how come nobody else can figure this out on Edina? How come there's nobody else on the planet that looked at these videos, gathered them up, and said, hey, wait a second, now I done this 10 years ago. And when I done that picture, and it was a video originally, it still is, we still have the video there. When I done this 10 years ago, I thought within 1 week we're going to have it. We're going to win this battle. And I'm 10 years, 10 years later, 9 years, 10 years later, and I'm the only person having that conversation. Just listen to it yourself. Okay, maybe not. Next time, maybe. The significance, we're talking about the most important subject in human history. It's the most important subject in human history, and I have 7 people on my show. God bless your hearts. 8 people. They got no one to censor. It's only me. There's no one trying to educate the population. There's a few people that are talking about it, but nobody's doing the extra work to try to educate the population on the most important facets of it. And so they got nothing to worry about. All they got to do is silence me, keep me here, box me in, and go home, tell their families how nice and great they are, and throw them pocketfuls of cash on Friday to make them happy, because they're getting lots of cash to be a scumbag. And it's interesting because I'm actually on a lot of platforms, and every one of those platforms, wherever I show up, the trolls will show up and say, don't donate to him, he's a scammer. And of course, they can't exist unless the industry donates to them, right? Pays them money. And they won the battle. Congratulations. They destroyed my reputation. Congratulations. Well done. Touche. Yeah, you're really special. You got a job being stupid, and you seized it, and you're really good at it. Just like if your parents took the job, they would be really good at it. So would you eat food from a prefecture where 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout are stacked? And you can see it behind me, or you can see to your left, there are 14 prefectures where the food was banned for a decade by 55 countries. And so they just got rid of those people that put the restrictions and then put in people that removed the restrictions. Now there's only 14 countries with restrictions. The radiation not going to go away for a couple of million years. Pacific leader Japan agrees on a Fukushima radioactive water discharge. It's a very important story. And what are they doing? All holding both hands. Some of them got both hands up, some of them got one hand up, whatever. The 10th Pacific Island Leaders Meeting. Leaders. These are not leaders. Leaders wouldn't have said this is acceptable. Leaders of the Pacific Island nation and territories posed for a group photo during the Pacific Island leaders. Leaders shouldn't be going and meeting in secrecy. Their job is not to do that. That's not their job. Their job is to help run their... Well, basically, their job is to shake hands, get their pictures taken. The administration is the people that put it all together. In August of last year, Japan began, in August of last year, 2023. The official date that they're quoting is August the 24th. This was Fukushima. This is what the building looked like originally. Reactor 4, for instance. There's 4 of these reactors. And at the top of each building is fuel pools. You see the depictions up there. There's 2 fuel pools on each side of the reactor. And then the reactor itself is at the top of the building also. In order to take the reactor core out and put it in the fuel pool, it's all done underwater. So they're all at the top of the buildings. Japan began discharging water from about 1,000 storage tanks. From 1,000 storage tanks. We can only count 750, by the way. Collected after an earthquake tsunami in 2011 that caused the meltdowns. Well, you can actually, a single reactor can fill up all those tanks 6 times a day under normal conditions. And so the advanced liquid processing system, ALPS. Remember, we'll cover that coming up in a few moments. It can take everything they set up with tritium and they shake their hands and life is magic, right? For what they're doing, the tanks, if you fill up the tanks with 2.2 sieverts a liter, which I bet, which is the only one that they actually acknowledge, you can't build another tank on site because there's so much radiation, right? You have to abandon the site. So everything is going straight into the ocean. Just let me take you through some of it. We call it a comedy show because it's funny how the whole world can still be asleep. It's not funny, but... So, April 21st, 2014, TEPCO is unable to bring contaminated water under control. The advanced liquid processing system has yet to function reliably. Well, it wasn't functioning at all, even in April of 2015, let alone 2014. So that's a very long time after a nuclear accident. There was also the AREVA system. The French made a lot of money. And the idea was to trick you into thinking nothing was going to go into the ocean, right? That everything is in the tanks. It's really shocking, and it's coordinated by the International Atomic Energy Agency on top of that, which is, they don't have any sovereignty over any country, but they're really good at destroying everybody's sovereignty and everybody's future, including the species. For the last 3 years, the system has been unused and kept out of operation. So the Riva system wasn't working. The ELP system is not working. You had 100 million atoms per cubic centimeter in the sludge. Like, every time you look at this story, it screams, you got to get your act together and fight back. July the 29th, 2014, TEPCO says the groundwater bypass operation, this is where they're going to get water coming down the mountain and pump it around the site and directly into the ocean so it didn't flow through the site. That didn't work. They were going to build a fence to stop the leaking. Every time you hear the word leaking, you know, if a nuclear scientist tells me it's leaking, I'm going to punch him right in the mouth. Right on the spot, too. You can't build a fence to stop something when it was all gone right away. You can't build a fence to stop radiation because radiation, like, how is a fence going to keep that inside? The ice wall, of course, which is the stupidest thing imaginable. Why wouldn't you build a real wall? And it's got no top, it's got no bottom. There's no way to stop it. And in fact, you make it worse because the ice allows the neutrons to reflect, and that can cause a chain, or criticality, a chain reaction to fire up. But there's so many things can go wrong with an ice wall. Why not build a real wall? And why would you build a wall when you're going to cause liquefaction because you're pouring water onto this site? Plus, just, you know, the typhoons and everything. And then when you look at the map of the Americans who had flown over it, at 1,000 feet above it, and it was 3,000 atoms a square meter, 20 kilometers away from the disease factory itself. And then they used this map to say that's the radioactive, iodine-131 is the radioactive fallout. And nothing can be further from the truth. And but iodine's terrible, but that's not what you're worried about. You're worried about curium. They don't call the reactor cores curium for something to do. They call it because the biggest byproduct of the radiative fuel is curium isotopes, and if it melts down, then the concoction we're talking about, there's nobody or nothing on the planet with replicating cells has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. International Atomic Energy Agency, Fukushima treated water releases continue to meet the safety standards. The task force of the International Atomic Energy Agency. And of course, Japan's the third biggest donor to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And so they're not going to be prejudiced or bigoted or biased at all, are they? Prime Minister Manali says lack of scientific report on Fukushima nuclear water discharges creates uncertainty for the Pacific countries. And so, how can you get into a suit like that and not look at the buildings and say, holy shit, there's no way to treat it or capture it because it's all gone right away? My apologies. And officially, that didn't happen. Officially, they got all the fuel out of the pool 140 feet above the stump of reactor 3. Officially, nothing got out. And as of last year, they moved the goalpost all the way and said it never even happened. So again, you see him invoking the Advanced Liquid Processing System, the ALPS. Uh, 2013, February 11, new images from Fukushima Daiichi press conference. And this is one of the pictures. So in 2013, the Alps system under construction. So if you go to this story, 2014 August, the disaster site has struggled with water decontamination for years. Well, they don't have a system. They're building it, right? And they think they finally have the Alps system operational by the end of the year. Now, don't forget they picked up 30 million one-ton bags because everything got out. But that don't stop them from lying and manipulating and deceiving and spoiling everybody's future, does it? He said, so far, no complaints of the Alps treated water discharges are being reported. And so the protesters should be using that picture for starters. Because the world doesn't understand how dangerous and how deep down the rabbit hole we actually are. Just bear with me here. Just bear with me. It looks like one of my hard drives wasn't plugged in properly. So I gotta look for the alternative documentation then. Oh, I know where to go. Here we go. He's confident in the Alps water discharge. The International Atomic Energy Agency. So this organization that doesn't have any, it can't give you a ticket, it can't give you a fine, it can't put you in jail, it's not recognized as law by any country. It's a rogue organization. And they're going to put the health of their country and every person that they're supposed to represent in the hands of an organization that they don't know nothing about, that doesn't have any sovereignty over any country. Well, there's been tons of complaints of the Alps discharge. I'm doing it right now, ain't I? One of my biggest complaints is that this moron doesn't even... None of the stories are going to show you those two pictures, for instance, or reactor 1 or reactor 2, which are all meltdowns. The most toxic thing in human history. Bangladesh police give a shoot-on-sight order amid national curfews. A little late for this story, but let's cover it anyway. Citizens, because they want nuclear, so let's have a look at this country. Citizens, the people who pay the government, the people who employ the government, the people that gave... My apologies. Confined to their home with no internet access. So they collectively punish everybody in the country so they can maintain power. They roll out the military with a shoot-on-sight order and a curfew. So if you're out after the curfew, they're allowed to shoot you on sight. And they're carrying... you see that cop over there? He's got the 100-round magazine. He's got the extended magazines. He got his finger almost on the trigger. Police in Bangladesh, which have been out of control for as long as I can remember, have been granted a shoot-on-sight orders and a nationwide curfew imposed as student-led protests continue to roil the country, leaving more than 100 people dead. Agent provocateurs. The curfew imposed at midnight on Friday was expected to last until Sunday as police tried to bring the swiftly deteriorating security situation under control with military personnel patrolling the streets of the capitals. And the curfew was lifted briefly on Saturday afternoon to allow people to run errands. But otherwise, people have been ordered to remain at home and all gatherings and demonstrations have been banned. So this is as Orwellian as it gets. The protest is because of the police. The government has also imposed a communication blackout. No dissent. Nobody's allowed to have a debate or a conversation. Just shut up and get in your fucking house or we'll shoot you. And the reason it's like that is because the country didn't hold them accountable. Like that other idiot we just covered, where he's going to let... Well, if the International Atomic Energy says it's okay, then it's okay. Literally the worst human imaginable to say something like that. With all internet social media access blocked since Thursday night, and the government is not releasing official statistics of fatalities and injuries, I've seen one video of this cop where he runs over a whole bunch of protesters and he runs them into like a wall. It's on purpose. And it's contempt. So they killed him right on the spot, the protesters did. And so they should have too. That's the best solution for a scumbag like that. In extreme cases, police officers have been granted power to open fire on those violating the curfew. And the protests have spread far beyond the campus grounds and grown into a larger movement against the government, which has ruled since 2009 and is accused of overseeing rampant authoritarianism and police brutality and corruption. So the population fought back and the government just become more brutal. With her re-election January boycotted by the opposition and widely documented as rigged. Suffered a severe economic downturn since the outbreak of COVID. COVID wrecked the whole planet. Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of companies went under. Except for the big ones, of course. They're okay. Leaving tens of millions unemployed and grappling with record inflation, which was orchestrated with the Ukraine-Russian war, right? The young global leaders from the World Economic Forum orchestrated that quite a long time ago and then pulled the trigger on it in 2020. This was no longer a student protest, but nationwide civil unrest akin to a civil war. Said a student. So they're going to quote a student because that justifies their brutality. And then they're going to go home and tell their family how special they are because they're a journalist. Which is the curse of humanity is what a journalist actually is, isn't it? After witnessing the brutality, the cruelty which the police attacked the protesters, is now about change. We are marching for this government to step down. Well, there's more of them than there is of the government. And the minute that you let them take your weapons away is the minute you no longer have a future. Is the countdown to authoritarian, tyrannical governments. Protesters invaded the state-run broadcaster, setting it alight and broke into a prison, freeing hundreds of prisoners. Was this the protesters that were locked up they freed? The police accused of firing live ammunition at demonstrators and at least 40 people likely to be killed in the violence. And so then they announced a public holiday after a shoot-on-sight curfew. A public holiday. After shoot-on-sight and a curfew. And Sunday and Monday to be public holidays. What do you mean public holidays? The government has also imposed a communication blackout blocking all internet and social medias. They'll shoot you on sight, lock you up in your homes until they have complete control again. The internet shutdown means many people cannot top up their electricity meters, leaving them without electricity. A lot of people live on week by week or day by day, right? Look at all the stones on the ground. Because that's what they're fighting back. The cops are not worried about them because they don't have weapons. It's the 8th most populated country in the world with 2.2% of the world's population. As per the final results of 2022 census, the country's population is 170 million people. And it's one of the highest population densities. Iran is now probably 1 or 2 weeks away from nuclear weapons breakout. Should we hear that every week for the last decade? Here's 2 months ago, Iran set to reach nuclear goal in 1 or 2 weeks. Here's 15 years ago. Iran is ready to build nuclear weapons. Here's last year, February 28th. Iran can make fissionable material in about 12 days. So this story from a few days ago is just an extension of the last 15 years, isn't it? Fukushima mascot draws Snickers. Fukushima. It's 2013. Japan's Fukushima Industries blamed the misunderstanding as the internet erupted in the Snickers over his Fukushima mascot, a name that recalls a catalog of mishandling at the Fukushima nuclear plant. So this is only a 2013 story. And so the Osaka-based refrigerator maker, whose name derived from its founder, has nothing to do with Fukushima or the nuclear meltdowns. They call it an atomic catastrophe, the pieces of shit. Has been much ridiculed as social networking sites for its egg-like mascot with blue wings and red feet. I agree with you. It's stupid. The firm said nothing to do with Fukushima. The world's worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl. So instead of saying it's the world's worst nuclear disaster, they call it the world's worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl. And Chernobyl is officially the world's worst nuclear accident, but Chernobyl is a single reactor. Japan is 4 completely gone reactors. Japan reactors, pure uranium, pure plutonium. Chernobyl was a brand new reactor with a graphite core. And Japan's are 8 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings, and Chernobyl had none. So clearly Fukushima is the world's worst nuclear. Just one of these reactors is worse than all the nuclear meltdowns we've had combined. And there's 4 of them at Fukushima, for goodness sakes. And the world is in so much danger, and pretending it's not happening is the worst solution possible. It's the stupidest thing possible. The cleanup at Fukushima, the reactors flung radioactive substances into the air, soil, and sea in the days and weeks. Flung it into... Does it look like it flung it out? Like, these are nuclear meltdowns, my goodness. The significance is catastrophic for everything with replicating cells. For every bird, for every insect, for every animal, for every mammal, for every human, everywhere on the planet, everything, the bacteria, the fungus. It's catastrophic. It's unbelievable. And now they're even promoting nuclear as the way of the future. A series of leaks of radioactive contaminated water came on top of power outages that was caused by a stray rat. So, leaks. Why would you invoke the word leaks at this site here? Why would you call that a leak? Fukushima Prefecture to end temporary housing for nuclear crisis evacuees. Temporary housing for nuclear crisis evacuees. This was July 22nd this year. The Fukushima prefectural government said Monday will stop providing temporary houses for evacuees of the two towns, which is Okuma and Futaba, at the end of 2026. Yeah, Okuma and Futaba. And they got them in these cans, and the vending machines, whenever you go to get a pop or something, will sing, "Don't give up on Fukushima." So, like, you can't move back to this town, and the reactors are still melting down, for goodness sakes. The move comes as living conditions are expected to improve for the victims in Okuma and Futaba who fled their homes. You can't move back to Okuma and Futaba. You simply can't do it. And the only reason they're trying to move people back there is because the nuclear industry has such a big black eye from that, right? And they just want to mitigate it to protect the nuclear industry. And they'll kill everybody in that community rather than admit that there's an issue. The community's been abandoned for 13 years. And they'll always put those connotations by a devastating earthquake and tsunami, because they don't want anybody to perceive that nuclear could do this on its own, right? But a storm can cause the same thing, right? A tornado can cause the same thing. There's many, a landslide can cause the same thing. On April 1st, there was 966 people living in 593 temporary accommodations, prefabricated homes. The worst living conditions imaginable on top of that. It's just a horrific. And they sent a lot of these over to Hawaii for the homeless. They won't leave them there for the victims. Koriyama, prefabricated. The Koriyama is just a nuclear wasteland. It's like 370,000 people and unimaginable radiation per square meter. It's about 35 miles away from the stupid disease factories. In central Fukushima, rented out private properties across 26 prefectures. So the people have moved out and they're all over the place, right? Prefectures already terminated such housing programs for evacuees of other municipalities in the prefectures. So there will be lots more news coming up on that story, I'm sure. Japan's nuclear wastewater discharge, not a breach of the Rarotonga Treaty, says Cook Island Prime Minister. Is not a breach of the treaty, says Cook Island, idiot. Of this moron. During his visit to Tokyo last week, Prime Minister Brown addressed concerns. He said the Pacific leaders have reached a consensus with Japan, and so you can shut up. And if the protesters had went there with these kinds of pictures and placards, maybe that the Pacific Island countries would have a future, but now we know they got no future. The water has been treated to remove harmful isotopes, so it's well within the standard guidelines as outlined by the Global Authority on Nuclear Matters. The International Atomic Energy is the global authority. No one elected them to be the authority. I didn't consent to make them the authority. So a bunch of leaders get together and calls them the authority. It's just unconscionable. So they can have their job. So they get their job to be a prime minister of these countries, and then all they got to do is go out and sign papers that destroys the future of the countries, and they can pretend to their families and their friends that they're important, and to themselves that they're important. There really isn't any. You don't really have anybody on your side, do you? In the governments or in key positions. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Grab a paper towel. I got a leaky, not leaky, but I got a mug. Because I filled it up with ice and just let the ice melt. It's a copper mug, right? And they're the best mugs you can have. But condensation is something special. So you really need a plate with these mugs, and I usually do, but lately I haven't been doing it because I'm far from being myself. I didn't get out of bed till 1 o'clock today. I couldn't. I got a ways to go before I'm back to normal. It's so tough, eh? So my concentration is trying to at least do a show and be happy with that. So I just lie in bed and listen to lectures all morning, read articles, and just rest. That's what I'm trying to do, is just nothing but rest. And I went out and looked for a few birds this evening, and I've done that yesterday for a couple of hours. And I got to go to McDonald's to see any birds, because that's where they're hanging out. There's no food anywhere out there. There's no birds feeding in the oceans, no birds in the lakes. We got the biggest migratory route on the entire planet for seabirds, and there's not a single one in the last 3 years. But hey, let's put the International Atomic Energy Agency up on a pedestal, give them hundreds of millions of dollars to be scumbags, and hope everything works out. It's a great solution, isn't it? TEPCO-owned nuclear power station. Yeah. Used a process known as the Advanced Liquid Processing System, ALPS, involving special filters. And so there's a big push on that story this last week, right? And we have already covered that it simply doesn't exist. It doesn't work. It can't work. You can't filter the water after you pour it over a nuclear meltdown. That cannot be filtered. It's impossible. Like, all the atoms are the same size. How are you going to filter out some and not the others? See, it simply doesn't work that way, right? It's simple logic, too, on top of that. But don't expect that from the general population. We had a good showing last night, I thought. That was a pretty good show. Everything but tritium. They don't even call it tritium-3H anymore. And they haven't for what, like 3 years, 4 years now? Before that, they would always call it tritium-3H. Forest monitoring reveals self-cleaning effects of radiocesium. Self-cleaning effects. Of radiocesium in the ecosystem after Fukushima Daiichi. This is pretty fun stuff. Cesium, because nothing else exists, right? Only cesium. Reduces the air dose rate and radiocesium absorption by the roots. What about the uranium and plutonium and americium and neptunium and strontium? There's not just cesium. It's insane to suggest that. you can filter, that the Earth is going to. And the only thing you should worry about is cesium on top of that. It's absurd. Scorching hot here. I turned the air conditioner off. It was almost 80 degrees. And that's what it is outside. So if the air conditioner is not pointed at you, it's pretty rough. We got some background noise again in it. I got the ceiling fan running in the studio. Hang on, we're just going to bring up isotopes for you in a second here. Now, the military years ago claimed they had 12,000 isotopes that were classified. Because there's a big difference in your typical anthropogenic man-made isotopes compared to meltdown isotopes, for instance. Let's go this route for a change. Stuff is always funny. You'll see what I mean, just bear with me. So when you talk about cesium is self-cleaning and the air dose rates are reduced by... What about curium isotopes? What about the uranium isotopes? What about those plutonium-240 isotopes? The neptunium isotopes in the bottom, what about them? What about... How do you get rid of all of these isotopes and only pretend that cesium exists? How does that actually work? Half-life for 244 is 10 to 29 years. And 232 uranium is 29 to 97 years. And 240 plutonium is 4.7 thousand years. .248 curium is 327,000 years. And when it's anthropogenic man-made radiation, it retains its energy. Because like the normal emitters on this planet, like potassium or uranium or natural stuff, it has long half-lives and doesn't have any no energy whatsoever. But man-made has the energy, and the reason we know it has energy because this is what boiling water for 1 million businesses and homes every day, right? It creates that power. But potassium, you can't boil water by using potassium or natural stuff. But the half-lives of the anthropogenic man-made stuff, they maintain that energy for their entire life. So iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life, and there's 10 half-lives. So how can they suggest cesium and forget that all of these other isotopes actually exist? And they decay to other isotopes that are just brutal. So they don't just decay to uranium 235 to 234, then decay next time to 233, and the next time to 232. No. It's all over the place. They go from neptunium to plutonium to americium to... It could be tens of thousands of years in between each one. So like 249 curium got a 64-minute half-life. But it might decay into something with a 10,000 year half-life. I'm not saying that one in particular does, but a lot of them, that's how it works. It's got like a 6-second half-life, and then it decays to something that lasts for 6 million years. So how can they pretend none of this existed? Because clearly 141 years for 248 is not gone by. It decays to 249, to 242 americium, Pretending that stuff is not important is all you're doing is pretending, right? How can we pretend none of this exists? Half-life of 400 days, yeah, but then it decays to something else, to 234, where it might have a half-life of 10 minutes, but that might decay to something that has a half-life of 15 million years. Although some decontamination works, such as removal of layers of litter, dead leaves, were conducted in parts of the forest, now it was only 3% of the land. The other 97% of the land wasn't touched. Most of the area remains contaminated by radioactive cesium. So that's simply not true. It can't just be radioactive cesium, 137 in particular, which happens to be the easiest one for them to find because it pulses energy 600 feet every second. The efficiency of reducing cesium today, more than 13 years, remains low, rendering the development of new forest decontamination methods crucial. When 97% of the forest is contaminated with plutonium and curium isotopes, which is just more plentiful than the cesium-137. He said the results show that the downward migration of the cesium from the litter layers to the mineral soil surface occurs rapidly. And furthermore, the soil content of the soil increases over time. Of course it does. And the soil by even a few centimeters reduces the absorption by trees. Well, that's simply not true. Because, like, so if you got insurance, you go to, you build a house, you built it yourself. You hired a whole bunch of contractors, and you built this huge house yourself. It's worth $3 million. The insurance company says it's worth $3 million. But we're only going to insure you for the price of the nails. So if a tornado comes by and blows it down, we're not going to pay you back for the nails. And you're like, no, well, that don't make any sense. I come to get the house insured. Well, you can take it or leave it. That's all the insurance companies. That's all they're going to do, insure you for the nails. But you got to get the insurance. You don't get the insurance, and your house burns down. You're going to be responsible for everything. But we're only going to pay you for the nails if it does blow down. But you're going to pay for it. So, like, that's what they're doing to you. They're having that same conversation with you. Oh, it's only 137. No, there's no plutonium, no americium, no neptunium, no strontium, no xenon, no krypton, no iodine. There's no nothing. Yeah, it's there, but we don't care. We're only going to talk about cesium-137. And boy, are they going to talk about it. Yeah. Recycling radioactive sources aids cancer treatment. This was the strangest story. And this is part of an International Atomic Energy Agency. These are literally demons initiative. Canada will recycle disused, this is the strangest story imaginable, radioactive sources from Thailand in order to support innovative cancer treatment as part of an International Atomic Energy Agency initiative. And so this is the craziest story imaginable. You're going to love this. This is light years ahead of stupid, or before stupid even had a brain cell. The Global Radium-226 Management Initiative is designed to connect countries in possession of old radiotherapy. These are not radiotherapy, folks. Sources. If it was radiotherapy, why you got to replace it? With those interested in recycling or reusing them. But get a load of this. As part of this initiative, 65 countries are participating as holders of the disused radium-226 sources, coordinating this legacy to be transferred to partners with advanced technologies to recycle the radium-226 and produce life-saving radioisotope. Life-saving. This is what they said about every isotope that they ever injected it into somebody and never worked a single time. The Canadian Nuclear Laboratory, Chalk River in Ontario, Canada, which is run by Jacobs and Bechtel, which is military industrial complexes companies from the United States, received 2 shipments of disused radium-226 sources from Thailand Institute of Nuclear Technologies for further recycling, which will contribute to rare innovative cancer techniques. Innovative? They've been doing, like, it used to be radioactive suppositories. Stick up people's bums. And that's going to cure you of hemorrhoids instead it kills them, right? And radium has been used to slaughter people for decades and decades and decades. Right? The radium soap, radium makeup, radium cleaner, radium hand cleaner, radium razors, radium eyeshadow, radium lipstick. And it killed everybody that used it. It was discovered in 1898 by Marie Curie and was used in radiotherapy, but has since been replaced by other sources. Of course, it was used in what they call radiotherapy, but there was no therapy involved. It was just genocide. Of course, Marie Curie got two Nobel Prizes, and she lost both of her hands. She couldn't even wipe her own. Today, it serves as a feedstock for production of a radioisotope actinium-225, which is so rare that the annual global production each year is less than a grain of sand. So wait a second. You're going to reprocess massive amounts of radiation to extract an isotope that you think might have some attributes for curing cancer, which we know is simply ludicrous to suggest, and that your total production each year of all this recycling is less than a fucking grain of sand. So obviously this is not what they're using it for. So what's all the other stuff that is the byproduct left over? The story is the strangest story imaginable. So the production, and it gets worse. Olena, the director of the International Atomic Energy Agency's Division of Nuclear Fuel Cycle and Waste Technology. Notice how many times the International Atomic Energy Agency shows up in each of these presentations. It's incredible, isn't it? The backbone of evil. We are encouraged by the proactive engagement we have seen lately in this area. And look at all the morons. The actual morons. These are actual morons. Radioactive waste storage building. These are actually morons. Actinium-225 is so rare, the annual global production less than a grain of sand. And its half-life is 9.9 days. So you're making something that's less than a grain of sand, and it's all going to disappear in 90 days. Do you get it? What they're up to? It's leaps and bounds of levels. It's already annual global production is less than that of a grain of sand, but only lasts 90 days before it's actually all gone. Less than 3 months. To recycle the radium to produce life-saving radioisotopes. Again, they don't have any evidence that this is life-saving on top of that. Thailand has successfully transferred the radium sources to Canada with great support, excellent coordination. So they spent millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then millions and millions and millions of dollars to recycle it, to get less than a grain of sand that disappears in less than 90 days. If it's not an industry is stupid, what the fuck is? We covered that story last night, specifically Thailand, or Taiwan rather. Is seafood safe from the Fukushima after the treated radioactive water release? Japan Prime Minister says it's delicious. You can't quantify safety by eating something. But that's how you do it, because the population is so complacent. That's good enough, right? Hang on here, I want to see that. There you go. So there, if he does that, now it's safe. If you do that, that means it's safe. You don't need any science, any laboratories, any academics, any peer reviews, anything, nothing. All we need is somebody with a pair of chopsticks that look like they got a fucking worm up their nose. La 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 la. Hey, there's two of us. We put them over our head at the same time. Try doing that. China has a new bone to pick with the nipperheads in Japan. Actually, the Chinese are nipperheads, isn't it? No offense to the Chinese. Japan has been on the receiving end of hate and criticism, largely from Chinese citizens online in the real world, because of tritium. Right? This was meant to promote the tritium fable. So he eats the fish and calls it delicious, and therefore now everything is great. Have a nice day. And he says, let's support the regions by eating the food from the nuclear wasteland. And this is all brought to you because of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Japan is the third biggest donor to them on top of that. No, based on scientific evidence. Putting your face in a bowl is not scientific evidence, folks. I know that's going to come as a shock to anybody indoctrinated by the machines the first time here. But hang around, we'll get you up to speed. The United Nations, the nuclear watchdog, has clarified that the treated radioactive water is so safe you can drink it all day long, they said. You would drown before you would get hurt by it, apparently. Of course, none of this is true. Japan on alert over flesh-eating bacteria that can kill in 48 hours. Great. There's a 25% reduction in gas consumption in European power plants because of renewables. .25% reduction in a big country because of renewables. Pretty significant, isn't it? And what was renewable versus nuclear last year? I forget. Everybody's at their lawyer. Dana, stop lying, Dana. All right, I know what it is. I got to bring it up, though. Hey, give me a second. Bear with me. Work with me here. Oh. That's not supposed to be there. Scumbag nuclear. Small modular reactors are never going to do it. Oh, yeah, there it is. This is January 21st, 2024, this year, right? Nuclear power suffered a net loss of 1.7 gigawatt capacity in 2023. So nuclear went backwards last year. 2 large nuclear reactors. Renewables was 507 gigawatts, which is equal to 575 large nuclear reactors coming online in 1 year. So why would you even look at nuclear? Well, geothermal is your best solution, right? Is gamma ray laser possible? Federal funding will allow Rochester scientists, European collaborators to study the feasibility of coherent light sources beyond X-rays. The researcher, they got all the money they ever wanted, all the equipment they ever wanted. They got amazing facilities, right? They got endless. And none of this is going to be used to figure out how to do geothermal quicker and easier. No, it'll be used to come up with something that'll destroy the future of humanity. The researchers, my apologies, aim to understand how to produce coherent gamma rays and use these new radiation sources for research and applications to create antimatter. And antimatter is defined as matter composed of antiparticles of the corresponding particles in ordinary matter and can be thought of as a matter with reverse charge, parity, and time, known as blah, blah, blah. It occurs in natural processes like cosmic ray collisions, some types of radioactive decay. So no macroscopic amount of antimatter has ever been assembled due to the extreme cost and difficulty of production and handling. And a collision between any particle and its antiparticle partner leads to their mutual annihilation. So it's like they were saying a gram of it can split the moon in two. Why would you let the worst humans ever created play around with anything like this? And everybody in the nuclear industry is the worst human ever created. System mold to add nuke plant construction costs to the rates. So Japan is just going to add, they want to build new reactors, and they're not going to have to look for the money, they're just going to take it from you, the ratepayers. Why don't you do that for geothermal? Why not get the ratepayers to pay for the geothermal? And last year we had 507 gigawatts worldwide of renewables. This is insane. It's insane amount. The world's highest observatory in Chile completed after 26 years. Typical Japanese company, right? It only took them 26 years. And look what we're talking about, 26 years. And a lot of these observatories are put in places where there's a lot of controversies. There's the natives' burial grounds. They're very religious sites for the natives. They have a long legacy with the natives. They're part of their history and everything else. And they'll put, there's other mountains there they can do it, but they won't do it. They'll put it on Pacific mountains that the native in particular had coveted because of a long, thousands of years history. And it's not an accident that they choose those certain mountains. So Japan took 26 years to build an observatory on a mountain. Yeah, there's not much oxygen, and it's hard, it's not accessible all year long. You got a million excuses. Which one do you want to hear? Nearly 5,000 workers evacuated from the Russia-occupied nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia. 5,000. If you took a similar plant of geothermal, you only needed like 50 workers. And Zaporizhzhia, of course, why is it surrounded by farms like every other nuclear power plant, I wonder? So difficult to get those aerial shots. But sure enough, when you look at it, surrounded by farms, or farms right across the road from it, or right on the other side of the river. They were rescued. 5,000 workers. Why does it need 5,000 workers at a nuke plant? What the hell does 5,000 people do at a nuclear power plant? That's just there's 5,000 different things going on there. It could break down. It's pretty stupid if you ask me. United Nations adopted a resolution demanding, this is an organization demanding that a country do this, or demanding that a country do that, or demanding. Isn't that interesting, eh? They don't have any sovereignty over any country. They can demand all they want. They can't even give you a fine. But the media puts them up there as if you're supposed to worship them. Every child out there, the United Nations will only be happy when every child on the planet says a prayer for United Nations every night before they go to bed. God bless United Nations. Which vehicle would you get out of there if you could? Fukushima cars are still rotting. They're not rotting, they're radioactive nuclear wasteland. Recently, a YouTube channel exploring with fighters took a trip to Japan to check up on the cars of Fukushima. This is another stupid. This is, let me go to the bigger screen. Stupid doesn't take a break. They're not rotting, it's a nuclear wasteland, right? Abandoned radiation city. Fukushima, Japan, 8 years later. Abandoned radiation city. All the empty spots, they were razed to the ground, right? And look at this moron. Actual moron. Bless their hearts. That's a moron. They're in a nuclear wasteland, right in one of the gambling shops or establishments, and they don't even have long sleeve shirts on. They don't even have a hat on. Like, the first thing he should do is get out of there and throw away the watch, throw away all of his clothes, shave his head, shave his eyebrows, get rid of his nose hairs, and then scrub himself for about 2 weeks straight. And whatever you do not want to take that laundry and mix it in with your other laundry. You do not want to keep your hair. You want to shave your head immediately when you get out of there. Like, how can you get on a plane and go into a nuclear wasteland and think you're invincible? It's so insane how everything is still intact. Well, everything is still intact because it comes back and haunts you later. And so they show these fake Geiger counters. Fukushima City has around 3,000. Koriyama has around 3,000 of them. And right behind them, you see the tarps? They're on top of 1 ton bags of radiation. And they're incredible numbers per kilogram in those 1 ton bags, but the Geiger counter literally shows nothing. And so it's so stupid. He never even done the basic education. You fly their drones, and they should throw the drone away immediately. Look at them. Look at them. I mean, my goodness. In a nuclear wasteland, thinking that they're invincible. And they go into all the nuclear places, they're picking up stuff and dropping it. You see all the dust floating up. They're just having a good old time. Being stupid. And now you can see he's actually got a respirator around his neck there, but he's not using it. Now, that's not going to solve it. You got to wear a Scotty backpack and have your own contained oxygen to avoid the radiation. Just because you can't perceive it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or anything doesn't mean that you're invisible. And he's going to find out he should shave his eyebrows and his hair and throw all of his clothes away. Never go to that stupid idiot place again. And he's really popular on YouTube, so doing stupid thing is the name of the game, but going in there is not stupid. It's suicidal. Just because you think you're getting away with it, you ain't getting away with it. University of Oregon study finds nuclear industry complex is hindering Japan's green energy shift. And a picture from this angle shows up an awful lot, don't it? But that's not Fukushima nuclear power plant we're looking at either. Withdrawals from nuclear to renewable energy never happened due to the influence of the nuclear industry and the government, according to two researchers. And the study yielded an understanding of what a lot of journalists have referred to as the nuclear village. Nuclear village. And that would make him the nuclear village idiot, I suppose, right? Taiwan ends a ban on food from a nuclear wasteland. We covered that story exclusively last night. It's a really good video. Taiwan plans to further relax Japan's food restriction. We covered that last night. The whole 2 hours was about Taiwan. Prime Minister maintains a stance on Fukushima discharge. So he's just another guy promoting Japan's Prime Minister. Or, what country is this? The Prime Minister of whatever country he's from has maintained his position almost a year after Japan began discharging. I think he's talking about Japan's Prime Minister. It has been reported that approximately 31,000 tons of radioactive wastewater have been released in the 4 batches, the final batch beginning to discharge in the first half of this year. And notice how none of them, not a single one of them, and we do this every day, not a single one of them will show you these pictures when they're making those assertions. Not one. Would you eat food grown in a place where 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout are stacked? I've seen a few people went for their typical yes. I apologize for that. Because generally all of my polls are yes. And when I done that one tonight and posted it, and I was like, oh shit, that's a no poll. A few people are going to screw up. So we got 92% said no, they wouldn't, and the rest of them accidentally probably hit yes. We got 24 votes, we got 18 likes. They don't like my video tonight. A lot of very important stories in this show tonight. That's it for Dana tonight. Well, we done pretty good, did we? An hour and a half or something, did we? It's not bad. Not bad for somebody that's not very healthy. It's been a struggle. And I forgot to mention the last show, James Lucid donated $260, which turned out to be one of the most important donations a long time because I got hurt, and it's been hard. It's been very difficult on me. So an hour and 35 minutes or something. That's pretty cool. And my apologies, because we're early again tonight. That's the only way I can get a show in, folks. I'm not back to normal. And so the best thing to do is, if I waited, it would have been a lot harder on me. And I'm just doing the best I can, right? I'm trying to keep this whole conversation going. Okay. Have a great night, folks. Hugs for everybody. I hope you had a great day today and a great day tomorrow. And a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody on the other side. Tomorrow night, which is Wednesday night, I downloaded Harvard's Harvard video, Stanford video, and the MIT video from 2011 of their original response to Fukushima nuclear meltdown. We're going to audit them at some point. We might do one of those videos tomorrow night. This is something we've done before. But those videos, my site got taken down when we were looking for spiders 2 years ago, right? And so those videos don't exist anymore. They were a lot of work too, but it wouldn't hurt to re-audit those universities to show you how dishonest and deceitful and despicable and disgusting they actually really are. So yeah, good night everybody. Have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. I'm determined to get 5 shows in this week. It's not going the way as I planned. Not that much goes the way I planned it. And so I'm just that's all I'm concentrating on every day is pulling off a show. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. Take care, folks.